Well, hello. That's me again, and you probably already know the reason I am, gracing you with my ugly face. It's the fact that obviously at this stage we have a serious escalation in the Lugansk and Donetsk republics, and they've been shelled for the last 24 hours incessantly by the Ukrainian armed forces. And there are some measures already taken with the evacuation of the children and women and older people, all civilians obviously, to Rostov, neighboring Rostov-on-Don Oblast, region of Russia. And Vladimir Putin already gave the order to Russian Emercom, the Minister of the Emergency Situations, to provide at least 10,000 rubles for each base and provide all necessary accommodations for people who are being taken out of LDNR in the face of the basically barbaric shelling. And so here we are. Where do I want to start this? First, if you look today at USA Today, you will find, surprisingly, that Joe Biden's poll numbers are lower than those of Donald Trump in the same period. It's about 41% approval rating and 53% of disapproval rating. It's lower, insignificantly, but still lower than those of Trump. And we need to consider this very seriously because it has to be taken in the context, because at already that time, 4 years ago, Trump was constantly hunted and assaulted by U.S. media, all of them practically, non-stop. Basically, there was a huge propaganda war and false information of false flag operation, or what Maria Zakharova calls, what basically US media are known for, informational terrorism against Donald Trump. Yet he's still higher, however, significantly today, against Joe Biden, who is supported, and again in the case of the traditional US media, mainstream media, informational terrorism. So we would probably would assume that the actual numbers of Joe Biden are much lower than this 41%. Do not forget, American statistics is the separate science detached from the actual traditional statistics, which emerged in the, I believe, 16th century as a science department or branch of mathematics. And in this case, yeah, American statistics is funny. You can basically pretty much make up any numbers you want. So this is serious, and it adds up to what in the last video I was quoting the last U.S. ambassador to USSR, Jack Matlock, about the basically fake and charade which is being conducted by U.S. so-called lack of intelligence community and U.S. media, obviously from the from the service of the White House and U.S. government, is to basically cover up the disastrous economic situation in the United States. I am just from a grocery store. It's a separate story altogether. Of course, Biden's fallen ratings, and of course the major thing, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. Do not lose in this Ukraine, LDNR and Russia standoff the larger goal, the larger picture, or the larger scheme of things. LDNR and Ukrainian crisis is just one of the many so-called hot spots along the spectrum of standoff between Russia and the United States and partially combined West, and it is all about Europe. United States hoped in 2014, again, I reiterate this point, that Russia, after it liberated and basically returned Crimea on the due to Crimeans voting for that to Russia, the hope was and basically not even hope, the plan. That's how the neocons and all those people in liberal interventionists plan, quote unquote, things in Washington, D.C., that Russia will bait and will invade Ukraine in 2014. They were stunned when Russia didn't do it. Obviously, people have to remember also that LDNR republics, Lugansk and Donetsk republics, they emerged as the hot spot almost accidentally. Russia was not interested in any part of Ukraine to start with. Russia was interested in returning Crimea and preventing their NATO building their base there, which would complicate the situation for Russia and her southern flank dramatically. And Crimea was properly returned to Russia. LDNR were almost accidental, and Russia didn't plan that. But of course, the people rose up there. Some people, I wouldn't name their names, some of them were just plain simple stupid, and they hope that Russian tanks will roll in and support their idea of the uprising, and that Russia will liberate Ukraine. Sadly, they didn't know what they were dealing with, but yes, by the virtue of their actions and the large part of population of Lugansk and Donetsk Oblast, it happened. So we have now this situation with LDNR, and this is one of the few hotspots the United States is pressing on, because Ukraine doesn't have subjectivity, and even President Zelensky is not really in control of anything pretty much in Ukraine, and this provocation has all hallmarks of the false flag. And this is obviously inspired by the United States, because the United States need Russia be involved one way or another. And I reiterate it, if I'm beginning to repeat it ad nauseam, I will continue to do so. It's all about Europe. It's all about shutting Nord Stream 2, probably shutting eventually all other lines of the energy supplies from Russia to European Union, and then killing it, because obviously European Union without Russian energy is doomed. Well, it's doomed already by many other things, but in terms of pure economics, that's what it is. And United States needs that. United States needs Europe, especially German economy, for its lunch, because United States is in horrendous economic shape. So obviously American shills or globalists in Europe, they continue to push for basically breaking up with Russia. And what people have to understand is that at this stage, while Russia continues to fight, and again, it's not a real fight, Russians do not care really how Europeans, what are European attitudes towards Russia, but Russia definitely understands that Europe is a market, and it's Russian energy which supports this market and its development and retaining the ability to pay. Technologically, it's important, but it's not that important. Many people overstate both technological advancement in the United States and Europe dramatically. It's not anymore the center of everything, and it's not center for a long time. So in this case, Russia, as I constantly stressed it, can afford, it's going to be painful, but Russia can afford the breakup with Europe, and I mean complete breakup. Europe cannot. United States knows this, and continues to do whatever it can in order to develop this, so to speak, casus belli, not in military terms, but in moral, so to speak, and again, quote unquote, morality and the United States nowadays do not go together, and be able to basically coerce the European allies, which is euphemism for poodles, into utter obedience, and then start eating them. And of course, Germany is the first on the America's plate. So it is very primitive plan. As I already stated many times, it's kind of makes sense for people who would know what they are doing. The problem is that they don't know what they're doing in the United States, because basically everybody who is involved in the present situation, which of course developed really aggressively during Obama's tenure as POTUS, and what we deal today in Biden administration, it's a lot of Obama remnants from State Department to what have you, including, of course, Hillary Clinton State Department, which is basically not normal organization anymore. And you have this situation, and they push for this war. They need war. That's the only way, in their opinion, which can save them. Of course, if you imagine that, hey, somehow Russia does get into this conflict, which Russia doesn't want to do and is still not doing now, guess what's going to happen? Nothing really, because at this stage, I think some in Europe do understand what is coming in this case, and although they are not in a political power, they have some influence. But secondly, United States, even if it achieves its main objective, getting Russia to get itself involved directly, and pointing out to its poodles in Europe that, hey, you see these aggressive Ruskies, and they do what we are actually doing, but we blame it on them. So you see, you need to be under our protection. So this not gonna really save United States in the long run, because the crisis is systemic, including systemic crisis in Europe. So, but again, the idea, of course, is not to develop Europe. The idea is to eat it, to annihilate European industry, to make it completely non-competitive, and then obviously the idea goes get American products to European market, and thus, basically continue to exploit Europe as a market. That's classic capitalism, I'm sorry. And Russia acts also as a classic capitalist. Russia is interested in Europe only as a market. And that's the thing which many people don't understand. Apart from the fact that the United States will not be able to save itself economically, albeit there are some obviously probabilities, so to speak, however not very significant, that it might work partially, but it's not going to solve America's problem, because the mechanism itself is wrong. I mean, you cannot run the car which has the engine blown. But still, you can still kind of, puff a little bit of smoke and still, create some sounds. But the point is, the idea, so to speak, in relation to Russia was also that it is very old Soviet idea, because most US, so to speak, specialists, or quote-unquote experts in Russia, including those who are in Russia, they still think, and because they're stupid, they're badly educated, and they really don't have real intellectual or professional tools to properly basically judge it, is that what they don't understand, Russia is not the Soviet Union in terms of their attitude to the West. It used to be that Soviets were really caring, and really it was very important for them how the public opinion in the West would be formed towards the Soviet Union, towards its system, towards its people, and things of this nature. And this is the basically principle which embedded itself so profoundly in all American institutions that they don't understand what they are dealing with. That overwhelming majority of Russians today, they don't give a shit how Western public looks at them. Because Russians, in their majority, and again, I stress it, it's majority Russians, and I mean significant majority, they not only do not respect the West anymore. If you would go to Russia and talk to people on the streets, even in the most liberal Moscow, St. Petersburg, there will be a gigantic condescension and contempt, not just to the West as the entity, it will be the contempt to the culture and to Europeans as, so, and you have to understand that. The Russians don't give a shit, basically, if they looked at as the Mongol Tatars and, primitives, or if they looked as the most advanced people in the world. They simply don't care. As long as they get their payments for the energy they provide for Europe, and keep Europe more or less peaceful, hey, it's fine. And indeed, why some person from Moscow, Perm or Vladivostok, really should care what some Berliner or some guy from Hamburg think about it? They don't give a shit. It used to be that, and I, in my third book, last book, I write extensively about it. The criteria of the admiration changed dramatically. And it has a lot to do with, of course, the material wealth, and it has a lot to do with the fact that Russia is, as I'm quoting Patrick Armstrong, is the nearest thing in the world to the autarky. Russia produces everything, almost everything she needs on her own. And that's the situation. But again, you have to consider what are intelligence people in the United States. The same as what are journalists in the United States, which is basically at this stage, they're probably prostitutes are more honest and have more integrity than they do. But do not forget, they get to Russia. They don't go and talk to Russian people. The first thing they do, and that was described very much in Alexis de Tocqueville classics, Democracy in America, and then by Mencken. They find people who suck up to them because they want to hear what they want to hear. They want to hear about how great America is and how great they do and how incredibly exceptional they are. And as of such, they always communicate with the margins of Russian, or the fringes of Russian society, who will do anything. They will suck their, cock if need be, for money and for praise from the United States and the combined West. Most Russians are not like that, so they don't give a crap. So, and that's what they don't understand. And that's why since so many years, for 8 years, this was going on and on and on. And here is the deal. What probably many of you will be listening and expecting me to say, what will Russia do? First, you have to understand that Russia has many options, unlike the United States. I already am on record constantly that basically the United States is running now in a very narrow corridor of the possibilities for its what it considers the successful outcome, which is, of course, Russia getting involved into this conflict. Russia has many options here, and some of the options already are disclosed pretty much in Russia's response to response of the United States and NATO on Russia's ultimatum, and they're very clear. And in this case, Russia can respond on so many levels and on so many ways that's what makes the United States actually suffering from Russia's ambivalence or from the lack of situational and tactical awareness towards Russia. First, at this stage, if we use General Colonel Kartapolov's very competent and very professional assessment of the Ukrainian forces. Yeah, they are large. They concentrated some manpower there. But we have to understand, only morons in YouTube, all those fanboys and people in the State Department can believe that some javelins and some stingers and some RPGs from Britain can make any difference. They will not make any difference whatsoever. LDNR forces will be able to hold off any kind of the offensive, especially of the force which still, for all intents and purposes, in Ukraine is demoralized and lacks combat cohesion because of the trench warfare. Those people were sitting in trenches, shooting once in a while a couple of shells here and there for years now. And people say, oh yeah, they improved, they got supplied by NATO. Supplied with what, pardon my French? As I already stated, they get supplied by some communications, they have those advisors, and if you're talking about the Western advisors, West didn't fight the serious war in decades. And anybody who can tell me that American Army, U.S. Army, or U.S. military in general can plan or somehow develop something for the armed forces of Ukraine that they can attain some military success, really, read one word, the Baltsova. And all this campaign was planned with the help of the US and UK and other NATO advisors. You know how it ended. And Ukrainian forces have been put into the cauldron, and the Baltsova, and much of it was annihilated. So they are not capable of proper planning because the United States didn't fight serious enemy in decades. So, and don't give me this and don't refer me or defer me to Iraq war, which was basically the Turkish shoot of the third, if not the fourth-rate Arab army, badly outnumbered, badly out anything. So here the situation is different, obviously, and while LDNR forces are much smaller than VSU, the armed forces of Ukraine, they have obviously operational and significant technical support behind them in terms of Russian armed forces. Obviously, the false flag will continue. This escalation is yet another attempt on the false flag, but we have to understand that if Russia will appear on that war, so to speak, as the United States wants, then United States and some NATO assets could feel hit big time. And obviously the United States is absolutely vulnerable in Syria. And obviously there was a change of posture, so to speak, from Russian air forces there. And obviously even today they say in some Polish voivodes or whatever their regions, they heard the air sirens expecting Russians attacking, obviously, Poland. I don't think so Russia will attack Poland, like for the sake of overthrowing the regime, but yeah, Aegis ashore are great candidates, both in Poland and Romania, to be annihilated, and that will show again the basically military incompetence and impotence of the United States, the same as Iran showed it after bombing the base in, not bombing, just launching the ballistic missiles at the base in Iraq, US base in Iraq after the assassination of General Soleimani. And basically there are so many ways to do it. And of course that goes back to Russia's response, which basically rejects the NATO rejection, that if this continues, Russia will continue with the military technical means to basically respond to NATO and, well, NATO, say, United States, basically, and by creating a number of threats, many of which United States has zero abilities or capabilities to counter. And as already stated, there are 4 Tu-22 M3 strategic bombers in Khmeimim right now, and few MiG-31Ks armed with Kinzhal, plus those 4 Tu-22s are capable of carrying each 3 X-32 missiles. This is a very high supersonic Mach 4.3 anti-shipping missile with a range of 1,000 kilometers. So basically this force is more than enough to sink any kind of the surface group, including the aircraft carriers, in Mediterranean. And yeah, I mean, the United States has nothing to respond to because there is no air defense complex, which United States has and probably will not have for a long time, which is capable to even have a chance of intercepting, let's say, hypersonic Kinzhals, or mitigate the large salvo. And 12 X-32 salvo, believe me, this is horrifying thing. No Aegis will be able to handle it, especially considering the trajectory and the speed of those missiles. So it's all mathematics, and Russians know mathematics. And actually, US military also knows mathematics, and it counts and calculates it, and yeah. So here we are. United States needs it to prolong its agony, because even if the United States gets Europe, which now less and less likely with every day, even if it gets Europe, it's not going to change the dynamics. It might improve things slightly, but it will not change the fundamentals of what is already happening. And this is, of course, the departure of US dollars, the de facto de-dollarization, and de facto basically beating the United States back into the Western Hemisphere, because militarily United States doesn't have anymore any capability to face Russia alone, let alone Russia and China together. And United States is everything as it's humanly possible, due to stupidity and ignorance of its elites, to make Russian-Chinese alliance de facto, existing right now, and improving and strengthening it. So that's the situation. So they will probably continue to shell LDNR, and maybe there will be some attempts to probably do some local tactical breakthroughs. But I don't think so. Even the most fanatical morons in Kiev, they cannot fail to understand what it means. Because when Russia appears on that war, not only the regime will be changed, they will be hunted and they will be caught and they will be brought in front of the War Crimes Tribunal, which will be held in Moscow. And that's perspective they don't want to face. So here we are. So if Russia does appear in war, don't be surprised. But I don't think so at this stage it warrants it, because LDNR forces can handle it for now. And the fact that Vladimir Putin speaking today to Mr. Lukashenko, who is suddenly very pro-Russian and suddenly wants this unified state, he was saying still that it's obviously escalation, but both sides, LDNR and Ukraine, have to sit at the negotiation table and discuss Minsk agreements. If not, well, expect unexpected. What can I say? So, and that is my talk for today. Obviously, the situation is fluid, and as always, war is the probabilistic affair, and who knows, it might get really bad in like 24 hours or in 2 hours. So I don't know, we'll see. But what I'm saying is that Russia is not coerced by the fear of losing, quote unquote, of Europe. And that's the whole idea behind this latest escalation in LDNR. To coerce Russia, to make Russia somehow give some reason for the United States to grab Europeans by their butts and then basically have them until the European civilization and European economy are squeezed and basically, you know, squeezed dry. And the United States thus allows itself to agonize a little bit longer. That's what is this all about. Keep this in mind. That's the large game. Pure tactical details we will be discussing as things will unfold. And as always, do not forget to subscribe, and those who can, please support me on Patreon, which will allow me to produce videos which evidently have some success among people. So, hey, I obviously ask you to support me on Patreon, and that's it for today. Hopefully you'll have a more calmer weekend. So have a good weekend and relax. So I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.